Everybody dies, don't they? Everybody come back, don't they? Isn't that so?
You tried to get into the locked room today, didn't you?
How do the dead come back, Mother? What's the secret?
Where Angels Fear by Manly Wade Wellman. Recommended by Nancy Weitendorf. Half a mile from McCormack's cabin, a paved highway crossed the rutted woodland road, and here a post held aloft in the misty darkness an electric light. Muriel Fisher paused in its brightest glow and turned up her spectacled, good-humoured young face. "Let's interview that whiskey, Scotty," she said. McCormack smiled and drew the silver flask from under the tail of his old shooting coat. He was a tall, gaunt young man, made sturdy just now by rough, heavy clothes. Between his plaid scarf and the brim of his felt hat showed a fine, bony face, Gaelically wide in jaw and brow, with a narrowness through the cheeks. "Drink," he invited, and drew the stopper for her. She drank with honest heartiness. Her bandana-framed face, tilting back under the white light, seemed to have lost a touch of its healthy pink, but she looked ready enough in her tweed suit, turtleneck brown sweater, woolen stockings and Oxfords. "That braces me to the adventure," she said, handing back the flask. "This is like the beginning of a Sherlock Holmes story. Old clothes, thick walking sticks, a bottle of liquor, and a dark road to travel." Her spectacles turned to scan the extension of the road on the other side of the pavement. It seemed suddenly to dwindle, to become no more than a trail in the deepening fog. Only, she added, Sherlock Holmes was too rational to believe in haunted houses. "His creator wasn't," said McCormack, and drank in turn. The potent whiskey cut from his mouth the savour of those sardines they had eaten together just before starting into the night. Conan Doyle believed in ghosts, fairies, and God. "What time is it, Muriel?" She peeled down a knitted glove and looked at her wristwatch. 20 minutes after 11. We'd better hurry if we're going to reach this boogie bin of yours before midnight. They crossed the highway and plunged into the half-gloom beyond. Only a narrow strip of the sky hung between the two blocky masses of trees, and from it there filtered a slaty blue light. The moon would be full, or almost, but the holy mist clouds obscured it. Underfoot the going was uneven and turfy, and the tip of McCormack's walking stick sent a pebble scuttling. Muriel started violently, laughed to deprecate her own nervousness, and fumbled for a cigarette. McCormack found himself grateful for the brief flare of her match. "Tell me all about the house, Scotty," she begged. "It's a treasure trove of goblins, if it's authentic," he complied. "I've seen it only twice, and by daylight both times. It has the traditional look, all right. A big, square-roofed ruin 2 stories high, on a rock above a stream. The local gossips tell me that it was built maybe 60 years ago by a young couple who were found one morning in an upstairs room, hanging by the necks." "Suicide?" asked Muriel, "or murder?" "Nobody's sure. After a while, some relatives moved in, a man with his wife and young son. During the first week, so I understand, the mother died suddenly and mysteriously, and the little boy was so scared by something that he had to be taken to hospital. Next morning, the father was dangling and dead in the same upstairs room. That was the last of regular residents at the place." Muriel drew up her shoulders. "I don't wonder. What about the poor little boy?" "He didn't entirely recover. The grocery man down at the village says he's at the state hospital. Mental case. Can't rightly remember who he is or how he got there. Quiet, harmless, but they don't dare leave as much as 3 feet of rope where he can get to it." "And nobody's lived in this house since?" prompted the girl. "Well, not lived in it," McCormack told her. "Once a convict escaped from the prison camp and ran away through the woods. That was the year before last. I was spending the summer at my cabin. The state police tracked him to the house and cut him down from the hook where he was hanging. "Ooh," gasped Muriel with shivery relish. "In the upstairs room?" "In the upstairs room." McCormack lighted his pipe. Its bowl sent forth a soft rose-coloured glimmer that relieved his strong, bony features with an impression of whimsical gentleness. The night was strangely still, except for the footfalls and respirations of man and woman. No insect chirped or creaked. The autumn leaves did not rustle on the branches. McCormack thought that cold perspiration was starting on his forehead, but perhaps it was the condensation of the mist. "I dare hope that nobody knows we're out ghost hunting," he remarked. "Some heavy-handed jokester might dress up in a sheet and come to call." "Have you brought any charms along?" his companion asked. "Wolfbane, a crucifix, holy water, anything of that description?" McCormack shook his head. "I'm out to see ghosts, not drive them away," he replied, and smiled. He had an agreeable smile, but with his pipe fire half screened in ashes, his face looked like a clay mask in the blue dimness. Muriel Fisher felt less cheerful than she had at the beginning of the walk, and far less sceptical of ghosts than when she and McCormack had shared sandwiches and coffee in his snug cabin. That cabin seemed far away just now, but she refused to wish herself back. She had come out here expressly tonight to see a haunted house. "Where's the scene of all these gothic horrors?" she asked after a time. "Almost directly ahead," her companion informed her. "Yes, here's the creek, and the road ends. There was a bridge once, I dare say, but not now." The trees shrank away from this spot, and the fog-strained moonlight was almost strong around the two adventurers. Before them, set deep between rocky banks, ran black, swift water. McCormack stepped cautiously to the very edge, peered down, and then across. "It looked narrower by day, I must confess," he remarked. "However, I think I can jump it." He flung his walking stick to the far bank, gathered his body suddenly, and straddled his long legs into a skipping leap. He seemed to swing across the stream, gained the rough-looking rocks beyond, and turned back. His thin face was like a genial skull in the moonlight. "If you go only a little way down, it's narrower," he called to Muriel, but she, too, flung her stick across. "Don't coddle me," she cried gaily. "I can jump as far as you can." She suited the action to the word, and bravely, but her stride could not match McCormack's, and her skirt hampered the scissory thrash of her legs. One blunt Oxford touched the edge of the far bank. Rock crunched and crumbled beneath it. She felt herself falling backward. McCormack, moving quickly for so big a man, shot out a hand and clutched her by the wrist. With a mighty heave, he fairly whipped her to safety. "Thanks, Scotty," she gasped, and straightened her spectacles, then the bandana that was bound over her head and beneath her chin, peasant style. "You spared me a cold bath." They both smiled and breathed deeply in mutual relief. "I take that escape as a good omen," she went on. "Now, is this the haunted house? It looks to be." They had come into a larger clearing, but here the mist had thickened to a pearly cloud. In its heart rose a great cliff-like structure with towering walls and a flat roof. The walls had weathered to a gloomy night grey, in which shuttered windows formed in distinct deviations. A porch had once run the entire width of the front, but the roof was collapsed, the pillars fallen, and the floor all but in ruins. "Isn't that a lightning-blasted oak in the front yard?" asked Muriel, pointing with her recovered stick. "I suppose owls hoot in its branches to foretell the death of the heir." "There aren't any heirs," McCormack reminded her. "All of them died or were hanged." Come round to the side. There's supposed to be an open window there. He led the way, up a rise in the overgrown yard and through thick-set brambles that may once have been a bank of roses. 3 windows were ranged in line on the right side of the house, and the rearmost showed blacker than its fellows. McCormack pushed close to it, knee-deep in rank shrubs that showed 1 or 2 wax-petalled flowers. "No shutters," he reported, "and the glass is all broken out of the sash. Where are you, Muriel?" "Right with you," came her reply from just behind his arm. He turned, set his hands to her waist, and lifted her lightly through the opening. "Oh, it's dark," she cried in protest as her feet came to light on the dully echoing floor. At once she struck a match. It gave blotchy glimpses of a big, crumbling room, apparently running all the way from front to back of this part of the house. McCormack struggled in through the gap where the window had been. His bracing fingers found the wood spongily dry, as if the house had been decaying for 6 centuries instead of 60 years. "I brought no flashlight," he informed Muriel, "only a candle." "You did exactly right. Why chase away spirits with electricity?" She watched as he ignited the fat tallow cylinder, which yielded a clear, courageous tag of flame. "Now where?" she asked him. "There should be stairs leading upward," he said, and moved across the room. Its boards creaked and buckled under his shoes, and crumbs of plaster fallen from the shattered ceiling made harsh, crunching noises. The candle showed them a doorway, through which they walked together. Beyond, they found themselves in a central hall. Here was the flight of stairs they sought, its railings fallen away in a heap, and clotted blackness above. The plaster of the walls had broken away in sheets. Again they were aware of the presence in the house of decay's very soul. "Do we go up?" inquired Muriel, her voice automatically hushed. And McCormack nodded and again led the way. His left hand held the candle high, his right clutched his stick tightly, as though to be ready to strike a blow. He could not have told what he feared to meet. The upper landing was encircled with mouldy-looking doors, 2 of them fallen from their hinges. McCormack went to each, Muriel close at his heels, and held in his candle for quick examination. He stopped at the right rear chamber, just above the window by which they had entered. "Here's our haunted room," he announced. "See the hooks there, on the wall at the back?" The hooks he mentioned were set well into the plaster, within inches of the ceiling. Strangely enough for that house of ruin and rot, they appeared to shine in the candlelight, as if new and rustless. Elsewhere clung a strange pall of gloom, though the flaked and ragged wallpaper must have been reasonably light in colour. "I wonder if a 100-watt lamp would help this room any," grunted the tall man. "It looks to be in mourning for the 4 who were hanged. But we'll douse the candle anyway, in a minute. Hold it, Muriel, while I spread something for us to sit down." From a big pocket of his shooting coat he fished a folded newspaper, and spreading it out, covered a space against the wall directly beneath the hooks. "Now," he said, "light another cigarette if you like. I'll put a fresh fill in this pipe. Ready?" He took back the candle and blew it out, and they sat down in the dark. After a blinded moment, they saw that a dim radiance stole into the room. There must have been chinks in the window shutter somewhere, and the moon, now close to zenith, was fighting its way through the mist so as to peer in. The 2 ghost challengers sat shoulder to shoulder, each silently grateful for the touch of the other. Muriel again peered at the illuminated dial of her watch. "It lacks only 7 or 8 minutes of midnight," she announced in half a whisper. "Scotty, you're quite willing to stay?" Strange as it may seem, returned McCormack, I'm suddenly quite willing to depart. But I won't. I came here to see ghosts, if there are any, and I don't intend to leave so close to the proverbial witching hour. It was not much of a success as careless chatter. Silence fell again, and awkwardly. Muriel broke in a voice no louder than a sigh. Look. They both saw, or thought they saw, a stir in the soft shimmer of gauzy light. It might have been streaks of silent rain falling, had the roof been open. Again, it might have been the rhythmic creeping of long spider legs without a tangible body. McCormack felt something fasten tightly upon his biceps and started violently. But it was Muriel's fingers, closing for comfort on his flesh. Her hand slid down into his own grasp. He too regained something of serenity and strength in being able to reassure her. Scotty, she was breathing at his ear, I wonder if there's something the matter with the doorway. Is it closing? He stared. His eyes had grown more used to the almost darkness. Not closing, he made easy-sounding reply. The door's off the hinges. There, it leans against the wall, but the opening does look smaller somehow, growing narrower. And lower, she added. It's only an optical illusion, of course. And she chuckled nervously. But I'd bet good money that you'd have to stoop to get through it. Again, the illusion of bandy-leg lines stirring in the room, this time very near. McCormack at least fancied that he heard something like a stealthy scramble, and once again he lifted the stick that had never quitted his strong right hand. His left squeezed Muriel's wrist, trying to win back some of the calmness he had transmitted to her. But when he tried to fix his eyes on the spidery movement, it seemed to fade, to retreat. He echoed in his heart the words of his companion. Optical illusion, of course. I'd have to stoop too, Muriel was telling him. It looks like the door to a dollhouse. Again her chuckle, more hysterical than before. Chin up, McCormack exhorted her. When we get up from here and walk toward it, there'll be width and height enough. Are you so anxious to see ghosts? Now, she fairly quavered. McCormack did not wish to heighten her terror by denying. He did not wish to tempt any strange and sudden visitation by agreeing. He therefore kept his peace and courted the floor and walls with his straining eyes. Once again, something rustled nearby, menacingly stealthy. He leaned hard against the wall and drew up his legs so that his feet would come under him and bring him, if necessary, swiftly erect. Too much imagination, he accused himself. This was undoubtedly the way that psychical investigators conditioned themselves to experience phenomena that never really happened. No wonder people had been frightened into hanging themselves on those hooks overhead. But he was too rational a being to be thus stampeded. Optical illusion, he insisted once again to his thundering heart. At most, none of the things he almost saw or heard would be too terrible to face. A blow of his stick. But what if it lashed out and met no substance? I keep thinking I hear voices, Muriel said once again. Not human voices. Not exactly. They're too soft and like whispers, McCormack suggested, as casually as he could manage. No, less audible than that. They're like an echo, a memory. They can be felt, not heard. Imagination, said McCormack rather rudely. His eyes sought the door again. There was no door. Only blank wall, solidly pale in the dimness. He felt a tightness on his heart and throat, and with real savagery tried to persuade himself that this was no more than curious, notable, absorbing. "We're shut in," Muriel said aloud, and the ring of apprehension in her voice made him jump. Next moment, a bell rang, clear and far away. Rang again, again, again. "It's midnight," he said briskly, and with the greatest relief he had known in years. "Hear that clock striking? Let's clear out. Let's head back to the cabin." He rose to his feet, feeling unaccountably light, as though he had floated up. Once more he led the way, trying to make out the vanished door through which they had come short minutes ago. Muriel's cry of agonized terror brought him short. "Scotty, look back there, where we were sitting." "What do you mean?" He sprung round, still with that strange airy lightness. Against the wall dangled two silent figures. Bands or nooses of rope held them by the necks to the gleaming hooks that jutted close to the ceiling. The figures hung limp, lank, unmistakably dead. One was long and thin in rough coat and trousers. The other, smaller and unmistakably feminine, wore a tweed suit and scuffed walking shoes. To McCormack, these two corpses looked vaguely familiar. Again Muriel's fear-loud cry beside him. "Scotty, I can't see you. Where have you gone?" "I'm right here," he said hoarsely, and turned in the direction of her wail. He could not see her either. He put out a hand to touch her. He could not see the hand. Immediately he knew what man and woman were hanged on the wall of the haunted room.
Everybody dies, don't they? Everybody come back, don't they? Isn't that so?
You tried to get into the locked room today, didn't you?
How do the dead come back, Mother? What's the secret?
So that was Where Angels Fear by Manly Wade Wellman, apparently a very handsome man. And I want to thank Nancy. I said it as a German, Weitendorf, but she's American, so I honestly don't know how that might be said, but that doesn't detract any from my appreciation, because what happened was she's a great commenter on my work and really supportive, to the extent that she had a copy of a book, an anthology which I didn't have, called Hauntings, Tales of the Supernatural, edited by Henry Mazzeo. And it's a fantastic copy. It's an old copy. It's even got cut pages, like in the good old days, where you had to get the book and cut the pages yourself. Published in by Doubleday and Company, Garden City, New York, in 1968. She posted this, shipped it, mailed it, whatever you want to call it, across the wide Atlantic, and it cost her $30 to do so. So I saw how much it cost, and when I've tried to send books the other way, I know books, for some reason, they don't want us to send books to each other. I think it's they must have shares in PDFs or something. Anyway, let's say something about the story and about him himself. So it was first published in March 1939, Where Angels Fear by Manly Wade Wellman, and it's been anthologized because it is a scary story in various collections, including in the notable Hauntings, Tales of the Supernatural, edited by Henry Mazzeo and illustrated by Edward Gorey. That's the one I've got. Now, the illustrations are really cool. When you used to get books in the old days, they had black and white illustrations in, sketches. This one has. It's fantastic. So anyway, let's talk about Manly Wade Wellman. apparently very handsome. Born on May 21st, 1903 in Camundongo, Portuguese West Africa, now Angola. He was a prolific American writer and renowned for his works in the genres of science fiction, fantasy and horror. I thought we'd done another Manly Wade Wellman, but when I looked, I couldn't find it in the contents. Let me just have a quick look on my computer in case I've recorded it and not actually posted it anywhere. Maybe I haven't, maybe I have. I bet you thought that I was going to be away for ages. I bet you thought, if you don't know much about computers, that there's big boxes of files and I was just going to have a rummage through those and I was going to take ages to do it. But the one thing about technology is I was ages, but you don't know that because I cut it out. Anyway, back to the point. The point being the story. I was telling you about him. So his early years were marked by an international upbringing. His father, Frederick Creighton Wellman, was a medical officer in Africa, and young Manly spoke the local dialect before English. The Wellman family later moved to the United States, where Manly pursued his education, earning a BA in English from Wichita Municipal University, now Wichita State University, in 1926, and a Bachelor of Literature from Columbia University in 1927. Despite early discouragement from teachers regarding his writing, we've all been there, Wellman's determination led him to publish his first professional story in Weird Tales in 1927, marking the beginning of a long and distinguished career. This is a lesson, of course, a bit too late for me, but if you're just young listening to this, you know, your teachers and stuff tell you stuff, they don't know what they're talking about. They say it with great authority. You will be this, you will never amount to that. Your strengths are in this. They actually have no idea. I was kicked out of French, for example, and I was told I have no facility with languages. And later, for a period of some years, I earned my living as a linguist. So, flipping heck. Eh? So they're no nout. Don't listen to them. Listen to me. Big yourself up. Get out there. Positive pants. And all those other tropes that you see on your Instagram feed. Yeah, they say positive pants. There's a picture of underpants usually. Anyway, how we got there, I don't know. Wellman's body of work spans multiple genres. See, I told you I was a linguist, including detective fiction. It wasn't French, though. Including detective fiction, westerns, and non-fiction. But he's best remembered. I did A-level French. He's best remembered for his contributions to supernatural and Appalachian folklore literature. I don't know if you ever do go on. And there's a young woman who lives in a holler in Appalachia, and she just speaks in this accent. She is so funny. She's got loads of followers and well-deserved. She's just naturally funny. So I now know it's Appalachia. One would tend to say Appalachia. I think I've heard people say Appalachian, but Appalachia. Right back at you. He spent much of his life in North Carolina. This is Manly Wade Wellman, drawing inspiration from the region's rich cultural heritage. Wellman's most famous creation, John the Balladeer, a wandering minstrel battling supernatural evil with a silver string guitar. Sounds fantastic. I haven't read any of those. Encapsulates his unique blend of folklore and fantasy. I should say I'm obsessed with Dungeons and Dragons at the moment. I've been playing on a Monday night with my daughter and her boyfriend. And so I'm like, everything. I'm writing a Dungeons and Dragons scenario. So that's going to be my new career. I know I'm 63, but come on. It's not too late. Never too late. Positive pants, come on. John the Balladeer, silver string guitar, get back to the point, encapsulates his unique blend of folklore and fantasy. Throughout his career, Wellman received numerous accolades, including the World Fantasy Award for Lifetime Achievement in 1980 and induction into the North Carolina Literary Hall of Fame. Not Flame, that's Dungeons and Dragons again. Hall of Fame, posthumously in 1996. So teachers, leave them kids alone. You don't know what you're talking about. If you're a good teacher listening to this, because there are good teachers. I had some great teachers. I had some rubbish ones as well, but I had some great ones who were fantastically inspiring to me going through life and were positive, apart from the fact I was really lazy and talked too much in class and got put in detention a lot. And yeah, but teachers, remember the power you have. I suppose you do. There's me telling my grandma to suck eggs. My grandma never sucked an egg. I never saw her suck an egg. She used to fry them, mainly fry them, not poach. She never sucked them. So I could possibly have told her how to suck an egg because I don't think she knew. She didn't have her teeth. She had dentures, potentially. Anyway, sucking eggs and grandmas. Did your grandmother ever suck eggs? I don't think they really know how to do it. So Sheila's a grandma now. I'm going to go downstairs in a minute. I'm going to say, Sheila, I just want to ask you a technical question. As you're a grandma now, can you suck an egg? See what she says. She might surprise me. Anyway, that was a hymn, Where Angels Fear by Manly Wade Wellman. I think we've already made that point. It is a story that expertly crafts an atmosphere of dread and suspense. It does, making it deeply unsettling and genuinely scary. This is true. The fear begins with the setting itself. Bang on, gothic, decrepit haunted house. Yes, steeped in the dark history of suicides and mysterious deaths. That's a Tabasco sauce going on there. Wellman's vivid description of the decaying structure, he does do that, and its eerie, oppressive atmosphere. Yes, he does immediately immerse the reader in a world where danger lurks in every shadow. What he did really well was that he didn't write it in first person. It was third person, but he still led us. We were right there with them, weren't we? Walking through the wood, starting off cheerful with reference to a cosy cabin and sardines. That wouldn't have made me cheerful, mind. But whiskey and sardines. It's not a diet to thrive upon. Well, apparently moderate drinking is good for you, and sardines are good for you. So maybe you could live on whiskey and sardines and eggs. Apparently, I was reading about a man who ate only eggs all his life. He was 96, had all his teeth. I made that last bit up because I don't remember if he had all his teeth, but I would imagine he would, because it's sugar that gets rid of your teeth, and there's no sugar in eggs. Yeah, I thought it was really good. This Muriel Fisher and Scotty McCormack decide to confront the house's malevolent reputation. Yeah, they do, you see. And of course, remember, I've said many, many times that in a horror story, which this is, there is usually a sin which is punished, because remember, stories are moral engines. Their purpose is to get us to act according to the morality of our society. So a great sin is pride. Pride cometh before a fall. And that's exactly what this story is about. They were too fancy pants for their own good. They were too, and in a way, let's speculate on the relationship between these two. Do you think he's trying to impress Muriel? You think Scotty, who is he tremendously handsome? He's Gaelically broad about the jaw and the forehead. I may be that myself. And one would be too modest to say that when one was young, it was commented that one was perhaps handsome. It's all gone now, though. I saw myself in a full-length mirror the other day and it jumped out my skin. I said, I don't know what that is, but it needs ironing. Anyway, horror. Back to horror. So the room shrinks. That's great, because some horror stories are written. I don't think they're massively strong, but some people are scared by them. Basil Copper's The Spider, Arachnophobia, and Margaretina Lasky's The Tower, which is vertigo. And there are a couple like that build on specific phobias. There was one that somebody couldn't, it was a spider one they couldn't listen to. Rats as well. There's some of the rat stories that people can't listen to. So, he's building this specific phobia. And if you go on a creative, I remember going on a creative writing course years ago, and they said, yeah, use these classic phobias. The only trouble is if people aren't scared of them, it doesn't work. But I think this does work. When I was a little boy, I used to hide in the tiny cupboard. I used to do it to impress my grandmother, who was not sucking eggs at the time, but she had a tin. I've maybe said this before. It was an old biscuit tin, full of buttons. And I have said it before because somebody commented this was really common. And I would sneak into this and play with the buttons, even when I was actually too big and I struggled to get out of it. But so I'm not actually claustrophobic, I suppose. That's the point of that story. So I should have said at the very beginning, spoilers. Some people are prissy, aren't they? Prissy. I understand you don't want to. I've never been bothered by spoilers, really, but some people comment quite brusquely. If somebody has made a comment on the podcast and it lets the cat out of the bag, as it were, some people are quite forthright and blunt in their tone, calling them, in fact, jerks, which I believe is a North American term of disapprobation. I say North American. I'm actually, on reflection, I'm not sure if the term is current in Canada or whether they have their own, as we do. We have all sorts of words that mean the same thing, but come from different sources, and the Canadians may have their own term. So I don't want to be too broad brush with that. So yeah, anyway, I've been a bit mad today. Not insane mad, just silly and skippy in my brain. But again, if you've got this far, and this isn't the first of my so-called monologues which in fact is that what they are, isn't it funny how we say so-called and we call it into doubt? So-called professor. You mean he's not really a professor? Whereas Russians, I remember coming across this, Russians learned English. So-called just means it is thus called. So-called professor means he is called a professor because he is a professor, whereas in English it means, I'll tell you another funny story. Talking about linguistics, and then I'm going to finish. A number of languages use a double negative. The ones I can think of are French, of course, n'est-ce pas. You use both the ne and the pas. In Welsh, it's dydw I ddim, not nid ydw I ddim. You use it twice. In Afrikaans, it is extermini met jou samen. So again, you use ni twice. You don't in Dutch, though, apparently, from what my Dutch I learned. And so a number of languages will use a double negative to reinforce the negative. And I remember there was a class being taught, and the professor made this point, and he said, interestingly, there is no case of a language that uses two positives to make a negative. All right. And then one of the students went, yeah, right. It was funny, wasn't it? Well, I thought it was funny. Anyway, this is about time I was off before I descend into madness. Somebody said, another comment I had was, this made me laugh. Somebody put, Tony Walker, he was brilliant in the beginning, but now he's gone off his rocker. As if. So tomorrow we're going to Morecambe, and if you've got this far, you're one of those people who likes to hear these little anecdotes, personal anecdotes. So Sheila's doing a crystal fire healing Reiki thing at 7:00. So she said, we'll go to Morecambe and we'll walk to Heysham. Now at Heysham, there's St. Patrick's Chapel in Lancashire, and it's got these rock-cut tombs that of a St. Patrick's Chapel, which overlooks the Irish Sea, and whether it was an Irish monastic settlement. But it's a splendid place, a lovely little village, Heysham. There's nice cafes there as well. She said, we'll walk from Morecambe. Now, I like Morecambe. Morecambe's a bit like a down-at-heel seaside town, but I just really like it. And I like going to the bookshop there, which I think is a peer bookshop, the peer bookshop. And anyway, I said, what time's this thing you go on? She said, 7:00. I said, what am I going to do? We're taking the dogs, 3 dogs in the car. She said, well, you can go to the pub. I said, I can't really go to the pub with 3 dogs. I said, what I can do is sit in the back. I'm not going to be driving back. I can sit in the back with the dogs drinking cans. That's not a good look, is it? Drinking cans of beer, sitting in the back with the dogs, back of the car with the dogs. But that's probably what's going to happen. And then on Saturday, we're going to Ambleside. We're going to Appleby to a market. It so happened we were out some months ago, and she was like, "Oh, that's a nice Buddha." I said, "Look, man, we've got enough Buddhas in the house. She just buys Buddhas, and we've got Buddhas. Why? We need something else, don't we?" And there's a helicopter flying overhead. It would be one of those, somebody's fallen off a mountain helicopters, which is very sad, and I hope they get them to hospital really quickly. We'll let them go by. I mean, I could stop this, couldn't I? But I'm just doing it for atmosphere, and allowing me to slow down, collect my thoughts. So anyway, she says, okay, there's a green man You know, that carving of the guy made of leaves and trees and things. And I said, yeah, okay, we'll go there. And she said, so we've got to go to the market. She said, the green man is the guy who sells it's a hippie. I went, yeah, really? He lives in a van. Yeah, I'm not actually surprised. I don't know whether she thought I was going to be surprised. I'm going, yeah, of course he does. And she showed me a picture of him, and he had like them baggy trousers and sandals and a big long beard. And I thought, yeah, I'm not surprised. He makes green men for a living. You know, of course he looks like that. I don't know what I should look like. Anyway, that's going to be Saturday. And then Sunday, I'm going down to Loweswater in the Lake District to see my daughters because it's Father's Day. And we're going to have a little bit of a walk. I'm not taking my dogs because Catherine's got her dog Cosmo, who's a spaniel. And Jasper and Cosmo are kind of teenage boys, and they can be all right, and sometimes they can be all testosterone driven. So I thought it's just easier. And also, yeah, just easier. I'll go down and I'll have a walk around with my two lovely girls and Cosmo. And then we're going for a meal at the Kirkstyle Inn, which Catherine has booked. So that's good. It's a lovely... If you ever need a Lakeland Inn, I mean, there are a few of them, but a lot of them have been modernised to be kind of modern. Whereas what I want is old-fashioned, you know, Dickensian. I'm not saying they are Dickensian, but with the feel of the old country Lake District thing. And the Kirkstyle really preserves it, I think. Another one is the Pheasant Back Bar at Bassenthwaite. And there are others, but and some of you may know them. Anyway, so that's my weekend. I'm going to be very, very busy. I'll be very tired on Monday because I'm getting on a bit now. Anyway, there's a scrap man. I don't know if you can hear that. We've had the helicopter, the scrap man. If I'm recording a story, I have to stop when they do this. That's why it takes me ages. Also, I make lots of mistakes. Okay, I think I'm going to wind down a little bit now. Good night, everybody, or good day, wherever you are.
Everybody dies, don't they? Everybody come back, don't they? Isn't that so? Isn't that so?